Last night, Atlanta's most exclusive nightclub transformed from a celebration hotspot into an unexpected battleground. The city's elite were out in full force, designer fits, bottles popping, and enough ice to survive global warming. But beneath the pulsing strobe lights and thundering bass, a different kind of heat was brewing. The line wrapped around the block as Atlanta's finest waited for their chance to step into what would become the night's most talked about venue. Inside, the vibe was electric, bodies moving in rhythm, drinks flowing freely, and everyone looking their absolute best. This wasn't just another night out. This was where you needed to be seen. In one VIP section, Lil Scrappy was holding court, his charisma lighting up the room like always. His infectious laugh boomed over the music as he raised glasses with friends and greeted admirers who approached his table. Scrappy has always had that magnetic energy, the kind that turns ordinary nights into legendary ones. His crew surrounded him, enjoying the perks of being in his inner circle, the mood at their table nothing short of celebratory. Across the room, however, a drastically different energy was forming. Kirk, Frost, and Young Jock occupied their own VIP booth, looking sharp in designer jackets and flashing the kind of accessories that spoke volumes about their success. At first glance, they seemed to be enjoying themselves, popping bottles, nodding to the beat, entertaining their entourage. But something was off. Kirk's smile never quite reached his eyes. Jock's laugh seemed forced, coming a beat too late after everyone else's. Their attention kept drifting across the floor, to where Scrappy was holding court. The occasional whispered exchange between them carried an unmistakable edge that their crew either didn't notice or chose to ignore. As the night progressed, the tension became increasingly obvious. Kirk leaned in close to Jock, speaking urgently as the music pounded around them. Jock's expression darkened before he nodded, his gaze locked firmly on Scrappy's direction. Whatever they were discussing, it clearly wasn't small talk about the weather or the latest industry gossip. Even the waitress delivering their drinks picked up on the shift in energy. She hesitated momentarily before setting down their bottle service, noting Kirk's clenched jaw and Jock's narrowed eyes, then quickly made herself scarce. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the brewing storm, Scrappy made his way to the dance floor, stopping to clink glasses with familiar faces along the way. "You see what I'm seeing?" Jock finally said, his voice barely audible over the pounding bass. Kirk didn't answer immediately, his focus entirely on tracking Scrappy's movements through the crowd. "Yeah," he finally replied, his tone measured but tight. "I see it." The history between these three men runs deep. They've shared the same circles for years, crossing paths at countless events and industry gatherings. While their public interactions often appeared cordial, those in the know understood there were long simmering tensions bubbling beneath the surface. Scrappy's rising star, coupled with his reputation for unfiltered honesty, had made him both beloved by fans and a potential threat to others in his orbit. The DJ transitioned to a new track, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Under the cover of this heightened energy, Kirk and Jock stood up simultaneously, their movements deliberate and focused. Without a word to their entourage, they began cutting through the packed dance floor, heading straight for Scrappy. By the time Scrappy noticed their approach, it was too late to avoid the confrontation. Kirk stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, while Jock stepped closer, eliminating any pretense of casual encounter. The air around them seemed to change, the music fading into background noise as a heavy silence enveloped their immediate space. Scrappy lowered his drink, his usual smile dimming as he straightened his posture. "What's going on, fellas?" he asked, his tone casual but cautious. Back at Scrappy's booth, his crew sensed trouble. A couple of them stood up, eyes locked on Kirk and Jock, ready to move if necessary. The small circle of onlookers who had picked up on the tension leaned in closer, sensing that something major was about to go down. Kirk didn't respond right away. His expression remained unreadable as he fixed his gaze on Scrappy before finally breaking the silence. "You've been running your mouth," he said, voice low but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "Stirring up drama. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Scrappy raised an eyebrow, his grip tightening on his glass. "I don't know what you mean," he replied, though his usual confidence wavered slightly. He glanced back at his crew, now fully on alert but keeping their distance. This was his battle to fight. Turning back to face Kirk and Jock, Scrappy steadied himself. "If you've got something to say, just say it." Jock stepped forward, closing the gap between them. Despite his calm demeanor, the tension in his eyes was unmistakable. "We've got plenty to say," he shot back. "And if you're smart, you'll listen." Scrappy didn't back down. "Oh yeah? Like what?" he challenged, his free hand curling into a fist at his side. He took a small step forward, now nearly toe-to-toe with Jock. The crowd around them shifted uncomfortably. Some stepped back, while others moved closer, drawn to the unfolding drama. The nightclub remained alive with music and flashing lights, but in this corner, time seemed to stand still. Everyone within earshot held their breath, eyes darting between the three men as the tension crackled like electricity. "You know what this is about," Jock said, pointing a finger at Scrappy. "You've been talking out of line, spreading lies. You think you can just run your mouth without consequences?" Scrappy lifted his chin defiantly. "If I've got something to say, I'll say it. But don't come at me with weak accusations unless you've got something solid." Kirk stepped forward, his expression colder than ever. "We've got more than just words, Scrappy. We've got receipts." He pulled out his phone, unlocking it with a quick swipe before holding the screen up. "You want to deny what you've been saying behind our backs? Fine, but we both know the truth." Squinting at the glare of the screen, Scrappy couldn't make out the details, but Kirk's confidence spoke volumes. "So what now?" Scrappy challenged. "You gonna show me some out-of-context messages? That's your proof? Man, miss me with that nonsense." Though his words remained defiant, a crack in his confidence was beginning to show. He leaned back slightly, almost imperceptibly bracing himself. Jock moved closer, shoulder to shoulder with Kirk now. "This isn't out of context. You've been playing both sides, saying one thing to us and something else to everybody else. It's time to own up before this gets worse." Frustration boiled over as Scrappy planted his feet and squared his shoulder. "You think you can come in here and press me? Who do you think you are?" he demanded. Without warning, Kirk stepped forward, breaching Scrappy's personal space. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, nearly drowned by the music, but still clear enough to send a chill through the air. "Keep talking, and you'll see what happens next." Scrappy didn't flinch. "You don't scare me," he said steadily, despite his racing pulse. "You never did." For a moment, it seemed like the situation would explode. Jock clenched his fists, Kirk's eyes narrowed dangerously, and Scrappy's crew edged closer, ready to jump in. The onlookers fell into tense silence, bracing for the inevitable. Just as the tension reached its breaking point, one of the club's security guards pushed through the crowd and positioned himself between them. "All right, that's enough," he said firmly, placing a hand on Kirk's shoulder and gently pushing him back. "Take it outside or take a seat." Kirk didn't resist, but kept his eyes locked on Scrappy, his expression still hard. Jock stepped back slightly, though his stance remained defensive. Scrappy exhaled slowly as the immediate threat subsided, his posture loosening just a fraction. The security guard motioned for Kirk and Jock to return to their booth. "I don't care who you are," he stated, his tone unyielding. "This isn't the place for that." For a moment, it seemed like Kirk and Jock might refuse. They stood their ground, expressions unreadable, until Kirk finally nodded and slipped his phone back into his pocket. "We'll settle this another time," he said, voice low enough that only those closest could hear. Jock gave Scrappy one last hard look before turning away. The two men walked back toward their VIP section, parting the crowd with their presence alone. Scrappy remained rooted to the spot, his breathing still slightly uneven as his crew started murmuring around him. "You good, man?" one of his friends asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm good," Scrappy replied, though a hint of tension lingered in his tone. He picked up his drink, took a slow sip, and turned toward his booth. "They're all talk, always have been." But as he settled back into his seat, Scrappy couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The way Kirk and Jock had approached him, the look in their eyes, this was just the beginning. The night continued, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Kirk and Jock sat quietly in their booth, no longer drinking or socializing. They remained stone-faced, occasionally glancing toward Scrappy's side of the club. Their energy had transformed completely. These weren't just two guys looking for a good time anymore. They were men plotting their next move. Scrappy tried his best to shake off the encounter. Surrounded by his crew, he maintained his composure, but those closest to him noticed he was unsettled. He wasn't afraid exactly, but he knew full well this situation wouldn't end with tonight's standoff. Word of the altercation spread through the club like wildfire. What had started as a private confrontation was rapidly becoming public knowledge. People who'd witnessed fragments of the exchange began sharing what they'd seen, each version more dramatic than the last. "Kirk and Jock were ready to throw hands," one woman claimed to her friends at the bar. "Nah, Scrappy stood them down like a boss," countered a man nearby, though he'd only caught the tail end of the situation. It didn't matter that the confrontation hadn't turned physical. In the retelling, it became something much larger. By the time club-goers started pulling out their phones, the story had taken on a life of its own. A shaky video captured from across the room began circulating on social media. The footage didn't show much, just Kirk and Jock standing menacingly close to Scrappy, but that was enough. Within minutes, hashtags started trending. Kirk vs. Scrappy, Jock got receipts, and club drama out. Atlanta's nightlife scene had just produced its latest viral moment. Back in the VIP section, Kirk checked his phone and saw the social media storm unfolding. Comments were pouring in, some siding with him and Jock, claiming Scrappy had finally gotten what he deserved, while others praised Scrappy for standing his ground. The public spectacle only fueled Kirk's frustration. "They're talking like we're the bad guys," Kirk muttered to Jock, showing him the screen. "Like we're the ones who started this." Jock shook his head. "It's just noise," he said, "but maybe it's time we set the record straight." Kirk nodded, his expression hardening. "Yeah, we need to handle this." Meanwhile, Scrappy's crew was tracking the same social media explosion. "They're calling you a legend, man," one friend said, trying to lighten the mood as he showed Scrappy his phone. "The king of the club?" Scrappy forced a smile, but his eyes remained serious. "Yeah, sure," he replied, "but we both know they're not done with this." He gestured toward Kirk and Jock's booth. "They're sitting over there plotting. You think this is the end? Nah, they're just getting started." As the night wound down and the crowd thinned out, people continued buzzing about what they'd witnessed. Some lingered in the parking lot, speculating about what would happen next. Everyone who'd been there felt like they'd been part of something bigger than just a regular night out. Inside, Kirk and Jock finally stood to leave. They hadn't spoken much since returning to their booth. They didn't need to. The tension was thick enough that words weren't necessary. They exchanged a glance before Kirk nodded toward the exit. "Let's go." Scrappy watched them leave from across the room, his jaw tightening. "They think they're just gonna walk out of here and come at me another day," he muttered. His friend leaned in to whisper something, but Scrappy just shook his head. "Nah," he said firmly, "this ain't over." Outside, in the cool night air, Kirk and Jock walked silently past the remaining club-goers to their car. As they drove off, the glow of their phones illuminated their faces while they scrolled through the online reactions. "You know what we need to do," Kirk finally said after a long silence. Jock looked at him and nodded knowingly. The confrontation in the club might have ended, but the real battle was just beginning.